Welcome to Reddit voiceover. For your daily dose of interesting, horrifying or downright crazy Reddit stories and AMAs. If you like the content, please consider subscribing and leaving a like on the video. Enjoy. What is the kindest thing you've done or seen? I was selling my bike when I was a teen for $30. Got a hit and set up a location. Ended up being greeted by two kids on a single bike, one on the pegs, and the kid with the bike bought his friend my bike so they could ride together. Now that is a bro right there. Love hearing stuff like this. Thanks for sharing. An older gentleman tried to ship an envelope to his grandson from a shipping company I worked at. The way he acted and the things he said threw up too many red flags in my head. So, against company policy, I opened the envelope after he left and inside of it was 5 figures in cash. I called the cops and told them to get in touch with the man and try to figure out what was going on. As it turns out, someone had called the older man and said his grandson was in the hospital and if they didn't send the money he would get a surgery that was badly needed. The older man couldn't get in touch with the grandson by phone, so he panicked and sent the money to the address they provided. We were able to stop it from happening and get the money back to him. He said it was basically his life savings. The story kind of got big and the news ran a story on it, and apparently it's a scam that happens to a lot of older people. We started this kind of club to reach out to nursing homes and try and educate people about it, and a lot of people were not aware of anything like that happening. A lot of good came from me just being nosy. A friend of mine, educated and in her 60s, fell for one of these type scams. She was embarrassed but told everyone she could so others would learn from her mistake. I can very easily imagine mum falling for some kind of scam before we put in a home. She was pretty talkative to anyone who called because she considered it rude to just hang up. It's scary. My 86-year-old friend fell for one such scam. She's sharp as a whip, but it's not as if she heard about such scams in her day-to-day life. A computer virus told her to contact Apple, really some Indian office, to fix it. They fixed it for a somewhat reasonable sounding rate in the hundreds, yet told her she qualified for a discount that she had to manually enter on their site to deduct from their fee. They tricked her into thinking she added an extra zero to the deduction and so took out $2,000 from their account. She looked in her account and sure enough, there was an extra $2,000 there. They told her the only way to pay them back in time, to not cause huge problems on their end, was through gift cards. Most of you are probably already aware that on that day, it is possible to transfer money into an account that clears the first pass yet later evaporates when the bank inspects it closer, and B, any request for gift cards is a scam. She didn't know any of that, since she wasn't exposed to such information. They kept up the "you screwed up, you gotta fix it" energy all the way to Walmart where she bought $2K worth in gift cards. I had the sad duty to inform her that the extra $2K deposited into her account will be gone in a few days and there was nothing she could do about it. I try to tell everyone this story, since assuming they should know was how she got into that mess to begin with. When my wife gave birth to our firstborn, the woman she had shared a ward with while in the early stages of labor had a stillbirth. After giving birth, rather than spending time bonding with her newborn, my exhausted wife gave me our son and spent 3 hours comforting and consoling this woman. Something about the bond of mother seemed to connect them. The woman and her husband have since become close family friends and had 2 beautiful children after this. They still credit the support we, mostly my wife, gave them in the period of time after the stillbirth, especially in those 3 hours, with helping them get through their grief. The kindest act I've ever seen done by the kindest person I've ever met. Edit. Wow. This really did blow up. Thanks for all the upvotes, awards and kind comments. Means a lot. For all those asking, no, you cannot have my wife. Your wife is a keeper. You definitely should marry her. That was beautiful. Your wife was wonderful to be so selfless and your story is a blessing too. The way that you love her is also inspiring. Last August, I loaded some camping gear onto the back of my bicycle and left my home in Wisconsin with the goal of riding to Seattle and down the Pacific coast. I spent about 6 months on the road. Along the way, every single person I met wanted to help me in whatever way they were able. Whether it was a driver who saw me stopped on the side of the road in the night of nowhere, Wyoming, and pulled over simply to offer me an extra bottle of water, or the people who welcomed me into their home for a night, providing me with a warm bed, hot shower, and their wonderful company over a delicious dinner. Everybody wanted to be a positive part of my story. As for the kindest thing I've ever done, the first that comes to mind was from back in high school. My school used the city buses as school buses, and because I lived a block from a bus stop on a route that also went right past the school, my bus just followed that exact route. It also ran just a couple minutes behind a regularly scheduled city bus for the same route. As a result, it wasn't uncommon to see adults commuting to work on the school bus. I also got on early enough that I could always find a seat, but just a few stops later, the seats would often be full and new passengers would have to stand. There was a woman who sometimes got on the bus a short while after me with her young child, like just starting to string together basic 2 or 3 word sentences, and although she could walk pretty well, mom often carried her. On a couple of occasions when all the seats were already full, I'd notice other students offer the woman their seat, and she would always politely decline. But when a seat was available, she'd always take it. So I started always sitting near the front of the bus. On those days that I saw the woman waiting for the school bus instead of the regular bus, and when all the seats were already full, I'd stand up right before she boarded the bus and find somewhere to stand for the rest of my ride. And the woman would always take my empty seat. On a couple of occasions, when there were still other empty seats, when we got to her stop, she and I would chat a little bit. She was really nice, and her daughter was very friendly and absolutely adorable. I kept doing that for the last several months of my senior year, but I never told her what I was up to, and as far as I know, none of the other regular passengers who saw me do it ever told her either. I reached out to dozens of people my dad has known and told me stories about throughout the years. Cousins, relatives, cowhawkers, groomsmen, friends throughout his adult years, friends from childhood, and even from his recently deceased dad before he passed away. I asked them if they could share a memory or picture they had of him. I was overwhelmed by the responses. So many people wrote back, even people I had missed but had heard about it through the grapevine. It was so kind of those people to dig through their archives and spend the time to do that. I compiled them all into a box and gave it to him for his 60th birthday. My dad and the rest of our family all really enjoyed reading the letters and seeing long lost photographs. Background: my family and I were homeless when I was about to turn 13. My youngest brother is severely autistic. We were standing in line for lunch at the local soup kitchen, which opened at 11 AM. We had arrived at 6 in the morning and were decently close to the door, only about 20 other people in front of us. My father had just returned from taking my youngest brother for yet another walk around the block, as he had begun fighting and stimming and biting himself in frustration. After another few minutes in line, it was clear that he had more than reached his tiny 9-year-old limit and had begun to lose it. There was a couple of guys who were dressed in ratty t-shirts, Jane vests covered in patches, and plenty of veteran memorabilia, mostly from Vietnam. Think those little ribbons or the POW Maya patches. Each of them had either an old, dirty backpack or a trash bag which held all of their personal belongings in the world. One of the men, in a wheelchair and missing a leg, seeing my little brother's frustration and hearing my mother explain yet again that he had severe autism, rolled up to the 5 of us, 2 parents and 3 young kids, all sunburnt from the Florida sun with no place to call home, and unhooked his one treasured possession. He had a little stuffed monkey that was hooked onto his steering portion of the wheelchair. It was the only clean thing about the man, or really anyone else in line. It had a little vest like his, a tiny Jane jacket with a small POW patch on its back. He gave it to my little brother, and my little brother immediately hugged it and cuddled with it, calming down. I'll never forget his words. He looks like he could use it more than me. It was his one and only real, treasured possession, and he gave it to the little boy that was crying. Now, I'm in a position to give back. And I do whenever I can. If I have the opportunity, I help those who need it. But I don't think I could ever repay that single gesture, so I just try to live my life the best way I possibly can. Yes, I once heard the phrase, "I know it seems as though the $100 they gave you is better than my $10, but that was my last $10. It has stuck with me. It's the thoughtful things that matter." I went to pump gas today. The card reader was broken, so I went inside. As I opened the door I saw a mother holding her daughter's hand saying, "Come here honey," as she inched towards the cashier. She then pulled out a crumpled dollar bill and some change and told the cashier $1.47 on 3 please. When it was my turn I added $10 to her pump. I tried to do the deed unnoticed, but her $1.47 worth of gas ran out before I could enter my $10 worth. This resulted in me going outside and telling her to try the pump again. She knew it was me and was very thankful. I can't help but wonder if the exchange was destiny at play. How often is a card reader broken at a gas station forcing you to go inside? Had that not been the case I wouldn't have been presented the opportunity to help. Before the mother left she told me that she hopes someone does something nice for me in return. Though that would be appreciated, the only thing I truly hope for in return is to be presented with more opportunities where I can be of help. I have yet a single regret, only adding $10. I'm epileptic. Once, during a school assembly, I had a seizure. It was pretty bad too. When I woke up, the first people I saw were my English teacher, and she was smiling and telling me it would be okay, and my health teacher, who was apparently the first person to run and get me help. I was in a super emotional state after the seizure, and I began to cry and say I'm sorry. I was hushed by my teacher and helped down the bleachers by them. My health teacher, my English teacher, my choir director and the school counselor all stayed by me until I got into the ambulance. My literature teacher also ended up sending me a very nice video of her and all of her family wishing me well. Another seizure I had, I was at a con, standing in line to get David Tennant's autograph. I was so excited that I had a seizure, and after I woke up I was wheeled back behind a curtain that was behind the booth. A moment later, David Tennant's agent came up to me and asked me what color pen I wanted. I was confused, but I said black. After he said that, he explained that David wanted to come back and make sure I was okay, which he did. The first thing he said to me was, "What are you doing falling down on me?" And he walked over and we had a full conversation. He asked my name and autographed the book I had brought for him to. I got a picture, a conversation and an autograph from David Tennant. And this was big. I'm a huge fangirl for him. All he wanted was to make sure I was okay. I was talking to some random guy in the bar and he said he was having surgery the next day and didn't have someone to pick him up after. I ended up driving him there, sitting with him before he went back, calling his parents when he got out, sitting with him in recovery, picking up his post-op meds, driving him home, and making sure he was okay before I left. Never saw him again, and that's okay. Edit. AWW. Thanks guys. To answer a couple questions, dude was just grabbing a bite to eat before his cute off time. His girlfriend had just broken up and moved, and his backup fell through. Guy just needed a hand. Seemed like no big deal at the time. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more daily content. Reddit voiceover out.